All right, if you don't remember anything else from Pedagogy of the Oppressed, you have to remember the banking concept. It is traditionally considered one of really the key concepts from Pedagogy of the Oppressed from Paulo Freire, the idea of banking as a metaphor for education. It is predominantly, I think it is introduced and takes up most of Chapter 2 in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So if you're looking for it and you can't find it, well, A, you haven't read the book, and B, just look in Chapter 2. You'll see plenty there. So what is the banking concept? Well, it is essentially the idea that students are passive receptors of deposits of knowledge, of skills, of whatever, that are prescribed and delivered by the instructor. Friere says, knowledge is a gift bestowed by those who consider themselves knowledgeable upon those whom they consider to know nothing. So it does have a top-down approach, right, from the oppressor to the oppressed. Right? There's this bestowing of knowledge and skills. I'm going to write and skills because it could be a training program as well. And it's the idea that there is something essentially worthy that the oppressor has to teach. That could be the curriculum, that could be the culture, that could be the whatever it is that's being taught, either overtly or through the hidden curriculum. It also has the idea that there is nothing of value that the oppressed, those who are receiving these deposits, have. It is, how do I say it? It is the least transformative of any concept, right? Because it's simply putting knowledge into something that holds it for a while and then spits it back out when it's time. So it is the epitome, truly, of training rather than education or understanding. So think of it this way. If we are doing a banking concept of education, then all that I would want you to know as your teacher is that this is a term, here's its definition. And when you were asked at some point in the future, what is the banking concept from Paulo Freire, you could quote this or regurgitate the idea back to me. The same is true then in a situation where we have a power disparity or there are social or economic factors that are shaping education in some sort of unequal fashion, which would be all the time, right? Because it's hard to find any place that is truly or completely equal. So this becomes a problem because what it means is that there again is a dehumanization of both the oppressed and the oppressor, because it's easy maybe to see how the oppressed is dehumanized because they're not ever even expected to have an understanding of the knowledge or to really be able to contribute their own knowledge or to dominate the conversation even. It is completely disregarding the ways of knowing and understanding that might be indigenous or might be localized or might be unique to a particular community. It also completely empowers the oppressed, but in a way that provides them with an arrogance and an entitlement that isn't necessarily going to be recognized by those that are receiving this sort of knowledge or gift, but also in a way that takes away the opportunity for flexibility or choice or freedom or alternative thinking that the oppressor group might want or need or to be liberated. And Freire makes the point that the banking concept simply mirrors the oppressive society. Right? The teacher teaches and the students are taught. The teacher knows everything and the students know nothing. The teacher thinks and the students are thought about. Now that is interesting, right? The action is with the teacher. Everything that the students do is passive. They don't even have a role. The teacher talks and the students listen meekly. The teacher disciplines and the students are disciplined. The teacher chooses and enforces his choice and the students simply comply. The teacher acts and the students have the illusion of acting through the action of the teacher, right? So they think they're doing something because the teacher is active, because the oppressor is active, but the oppressed don't really have action because they are not able to initiate or to volitionally do anything. The teacher chooses the program content, and the students who are not consulted adapt to it. Think about every curriculum that you can think of, quite frankly, related to formal education worldwide. It is often selected, and then those who are being taught that curriculum are asked to accept it, or required to accept it, and were often never consulted. The teacher confuses the authority of knowledge with his or her own professional authority, which he sets in opposition to the freedom of the students. In other words, the professional identity of the teacher, in this case the oppressor, is completely confused with the authority of knowledge. Right? So, just because someone is the teacher, by virtue of that role, the expectation is that they have knowledge authority. Well, it just might so happen that students know what's best better than the teacher, or understand a context better, or an application better, or know that this isn't the knowledge they need something else. But the banking concept mirrors oppressive society in that it completely ignores that this might be the situation. And then finally, the teacher is the subject of the learning process, while the students are mere objects. Back to this. So when we look at the banking concept of education, we don't have to go to a remote, marginalized part of the world. We don't have to go to rural Mongolia. Right? We don't have to go to inner city Toronto. Right? All we have to do is look down the street at any school, and we will see the banking concept and this mirroring of oppressive society, which suggests that the culture of schooling operates on the banking concept, and that the culture of schooling is itself oppressive and dehumanizing. This poses a problem, right? I mean, if that's the case, then we are in serious trouble with our education systems worldwide. What this does help us to recognize, however, is that even though race and ethnicity, even though socioeconomic status, even though gender, right, even though all of these are key indicators when we talk about marginalized or disadvantaged communities, right, these are key areas that we always want to consider. We know that every community of any combination of these factors is going to in some way mirror the oppressive society. This is the global model that Friere was talking about. And from Friere's point of view, we know that each one of those societies, whether they are elite or disadvantaged, whether they are rich or poor, whether they are minority or majority, that they are all being dehumanized by this oppressive society and the implementation of a banking concept through education, in the way that Friere points out here. This, according to Friere, is a travesty. What I'd like for you to think about a little bit is how you see this concept being played out in education, where you grew up. Think about your own perspectives, your own experiences. If you have children or are thinking about that, where they might go to school. And then think about the ways that this mirroring of oppressive society, this approach to education that Friere calls the banking concept, might be done differently. And I want to pose a particular challenge. Is there a way that nations or communities worldwide can retain, can keep their national education systems, the formal school systems that they have, yet eliminate the banking concept? Can they still have formal schools and not have the banking concept? Or is formal education so replete, so identified with the banking concept that mirrors oppressive society, that there's absolutely no way you could have formal school without the banking concept being a key part of it? That's important stuff.